So I'd like to introduce dictionaries in this chapter. This is out of the earlier Downey, one of the two references on the website. And so just because I think Downey does such a good job explaining dictionaries, look at this first utterance here. Dictionary is like a list, but more general. In a list, the indices have to be integers. In a dictionary, they can be almost any type. Turns out the indices have to be something that we already know, and that is it has to be an immutable data type. So examples of immutable data types are strings, integers, lists would not qualify, tuples would qualify. We haven't talked about tuples formally yet, but tuples are an example of an immutable data type, similar to lists. But in any event, the intuitive introduction in Downey uses an actual dictionary. So let's say we want to map English words to Spanish words. That would be what a dictionary would do. For example, to look down here, you'd like to know that one in Spanish corresponds with uno. One in English, excuse me, corresponds with uno in Spanish. So we can use DICT to set up a dictionary. In fact, when you do DICT, open paren, close paren, what this command does is sets up an empty dictionary, the name of which is ENG to SP, English to Spanish. Dictionaries use curly brackets, in contrast to lists, for example, that use square brackets. So if you want to put an element mapping pair, more technically, into a dictionary, you can do it like this. You can go English to Spanish of one, and I'm saying of for the square brackets. This is exactly the same kind of syntax we use for indexing a list. And here you look back at the opening comment in the chapter. The string 1 is an index here. And so English to Spanish 1 is equal to uno. And so if you do this, you only have one thing in your dictionary, and the one thing you have in your dictionary is 1. This is what's called a key, colon, uno. This is the value. In our case, it's the English to Spanish mapping. So if you had more entries in your dictionary, you could type this in. You could go English to Spanish equals open curly brackets, so that's the dictionary. String 1 colon string uno, comma, string 2 colon string dos, comma, string 3 comma, string tres. And if we print them out, we get all of the elements, but not in any particular order. In Python, dictionaries are not in any particular order. They are what's known as a hash table. So if you ask for ENG to SB of string 4, if string 4 isn't a key in your dictionary, you will get an error message. The LN of a dictionary tells you how many key value pairs you have. And so in our English to Spanish dictionary, this very short one that we have, 3 corresponds to the fact that we have lookups for 1, 2, and 3. You can use the in operator. You've been using that for strings and for lists. It also works in dictionaries, and it works automatically for the keys. And so when you ask whether 1 is in English to Spanish, it'll look at all the keys, and it'll find 1 as being one of the keys, and it will say true. Uno, however, is not a key. It is a value, and so if you go uno in English to Spanish, somewhat counterintuitively, it will say false. So it is, of course, of interest to know whether a value appears in a dictionary, and you can use the values method to do this. And so you can say, for example, VALS is equal to English to Spanish dot values, open paren, close paren. This generates an iterable with all of the values in it. And then now if you um, uh, type in a boolean, construct a boolean, uno and vals, it will say true. All right. So now this next example, I will start and then finish in the next YouTube. But essentially, let's say that we had a string and you wanted to count the how many times each letter appeared in the string. Um, so the hard way to do it would be to create 26 variables, and you need 26 variables since there's 26 distinct letters. And then as you traverse the string, you could, for each character, increment the corresponding counter, um, and thereby count the occurrence of each letter. Um, you could also create a list with 26 elements, and then you could convert each character to a number and use the number as an index into the list and increment the appropriate counter. And actually, it might be good in class to maybe actually do these two things. But what I'm going to concentrate on in this next example is to show you how you could create a dictionary to do this. And what we would do is we would create the dictionary and have the characters be keys, and the value of each key, that is of each character, would represent the count of that particular character. So let me pick this up with an actual example.